Bethel Today. I'm Janice Stevenson, and this show is brought to you by the Bethel Democratic Town Committee. Today we're talking with two incumbent members of the Board of Finance who are also running for re-election this November. I have with me Claudia, Stephan, and Eileen, Freebairn, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Board of Finance in general. I'm going to ask them some things about procedurally what goes on, because I think that's a kind of black box to many of us, and we'll also talk about their own backgrounds and what brought them to this position. So welcome to the show.
Janice.
Good to see you. So Eileen, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do, first of all, is if you would just introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about professionally what you did prior to coming to the Board of Finance, and also kind of civic kinds of things that you've also done in town.
When I was a banker for 30 years, and I had retired. And when I first retired, I was on the library board. I was on that for, I think, about 13 years.
Wow.
And when an opening came up on the Board of Finance, I thought it was a good thing to get into, and then so I resigned from the library board and went on the Board of Finance. And it's nice to still do the things that you were doing before, as far as financial statements and
Yes.
and all that type of thing.
Yes.
So I enjoy doing that. So it's not a job for, it's like a job for me, but I don't mind the figures. It's interesting to me.
And how long have you been in Bethel? Are you a lifelong Bethel resident?
I moved in 1959.
Almost.
When I was first married.
Yep.
And we raised 4 children here in Bethel.
And some of them still reside here, as I understand it, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm alluding to the fact that her daughter is actually in charge of Parks and Rec, and I don't know about your other kids, if they're also still here.
I have one son that lives in Bethel, and then another daughter in Connecticut and one in Vermont.
Okay, so all in New England still.
Right,
okay.
yes.
Claudia, how are you doing?
Great.
Okay.
So I previously served on the Board of Finance from 1999 to 2007. And Eileen and I, along with Pat Smithwick, were elected in 2011, and now we're running again for a second term.
Right.
I've spent my professional career in financial planning and analysis, so for me it was just a great natural fit for a way to use my skills in a group that needs volunteers. And I was like, well, this is terrific. You can help your town and use skills that you have and that you like to use.
Yeah, absolutely. My Board of Finance, although I did once run, is not really my area because I don't really have that strong financial background, so I tend to glaze a little bit. But that's also why it's kind of neat to have this conversation. Before we get into really talking about what the Board of Finance does, could the two of you, I know we have another person running, another incumbent, that's Pat Smithwick, correct?
Yep.
And can you talk a little bit about her background, because she's also done a lot within the community. And if you know any of the bits and pieces of that, that would be real helpful too, I think.
I know she was in charge of the Chamber of Commerce. She used to have a business in town.
Right, she owned, didn't she originally own the children's clothing store?
Yes,
right.
Correct.
And then was involved with the Chamber of Commerce,
correct,
et cetera. So she had some of that business ownership, financial stuff as well, and then obviously was very involved with bringing business into town and keeping it here. Good. So, pardon my voice, getting over a cold. Let's talk a little bit about the Board of Finance. So from my perspective, and I was real involved with the education stuff, I was aware, and always have been kind of aware, of what happened sort of from February to May. Mm-hmm. And that's really when the Board of Finance is really mostly in the public eye. Right. So maybe if you guys could talk us through that in terms of what's going on in the town, because that's really the budget season.
Correct.
So Eileen, I'm going to start with you, and I will go back and forth, and please feel free to just jump in, both of you, and work together on it. Right. Talk to me about what happens with the budgeting process, because it's not just the Board of Ed, obviously. Who all is providing budgets? How does that work? Do you tell people what the budgets are? Do they tell you? Let's take it from the get-go.
Every department in the town has a budget. And I think they start probably even maybe December, January, you know, and they figure out what they need, and then we start in February having them come, and they present, each one of them presents their budget, and during that time they explain how the year is gone, how they've handled it, and then if they have any increases that they're asking for, then they would explain to us why they need more money for that or whatever. And then also there's a lot of times there is, whether it's equipment or whatever they need, they also ask for that if there's anything they need. And we break it up, and then we have so many departments, like Board of Ed, that's one whole night, of course. But other departments, we'll have a few of them at the time. I mean, the police department, the fire department, Park and Rec is one.
Highway.
Everything is, you know, each department has it.
Right.
And when that is done, then what happens is the Board of Selectmen, they from that information, they present a budget to us.
So when the presentations are happening from the individual departments,
it's the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So we see it together.
Got it.
Right, and then the Board of Selectmen, they go through, and they go through like with a fine-tooth comb and do a first pass-through, and they say, okay, this is what we think is appropriate for each department. And then the Board of Selectmen makes a presentation to the Board of Finance in terms of what they believe is a correct path for the next fiscal year for us.
So in looking at it, because publicly, I know that what sort of towards the end of that process, after you all of, so the Board of Selectmen reviews it, they address changes. Out of curiosity, because I think there's sort of a public perception that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance always deduct the budgets from the different departments. Is that accurate? Is there ever a time where the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance might actually think that maybe they should put a little bit more in a budget than maybe what that department originally asked for? I'm just curious.
It is possible. Like, say, for instance, if one that would come up to me, as I remember, would be like the police department with the number of cars.
Right.
And the selectmen may have thought that they only needed maybe 4 cars, and if the Board of Finance felt maybe that they really need, you know, 5. So there is a give and take. It doesn't happen very often.
Right.
But usually it's the other way around.
Exactly.
No, that I'm aware of.
We usually take money out.
Right.
But I mean, there are times when and that's when it's free. Everyone can bring up what they think should be. The other thing is, a lot of times certain items that that the departments are requesting, we would put that into the capital account, which is a separate item when you vote.
Correct.
Capital expenses, and those are spread over a longer period of time.
And that would be something like if they need a fire truck or they need a backhoe or something that's not, you know, used up in a year, something that is depreciable. Okay. So that's the kind of stuff.
So the capital account, so the straight budget amount, when you sit and you figure that out, because we're gonna talk now about mill rates, but we'll get to that. So you have the straight budget. That's what we need to have the town function for a year.
Correct.
Right.
And so when they're figuring that amount, that is a 12-month.
Correct. From July 1 to June 30. That's the fiscal year.
Okay. And so we have that, and then the way that we get the money for paying for the expenses for those departments is through the property taxes. Is that correct?
Correct.
What is included in the property tax? What is that? What do we call that? And how does that end up translating into the dollars that we use to pay the expenses?
Also, there would be there is other income in the town also, whether it's fees like building fees.
Or your dog license.
Right, and also there are quite a couple of the departments that also charge fees, such as Park and Rec.
Correct.
Most of their programs, there is a fee for them, which kind of covers their expenses.
Yes.
But when you see the budget, you will see the expense for that item in the budget. But there is an income which you don't really see in the budget.
Correct.
But there is income comes for that. And also, I understand the senior center is doing that also.
Right.
So there are a lot of other.
And the transfer station as well.
There's a lot of other income that comes in, not just that. The main source of it is definitely
the property taxes.
Property taxes, and that includes your auto and that type of thing. But
and that's your grand list.
That's the grand list.
The grand list. So that's all the taxable, it's cars, it's commercial real estate, residential real estate, business equipment, and the sum total of that is the grand list.
Okay.
And that is what's taxed at the mill rate to cover the expenses that are in the budget.
So, a version on this. So it's both commercial and residential.
Correct.
And we had a situation a few years ago, didn't we, where the commercial kind of dropped
Because of the revaluation.
Okay.
Right.
But this was a while ago because we've done another. And talk to me about revaluation. Just can you give me a brief definition of what that means?
There's statutes in Connecticut that periodically all property needs to be revalued, and
that means, like, essentially they come in and they say, if you were to sell this tomorrow, this is how much we think was the fair price
pretty
for that.
much.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, do we tax 100% of that?
No, you have a value of your property, and then the assessed value, which is what you pay your taxes on, is 70%. So you pay your taxes on 70% of the total value of your property. So if your property is worth $100,000, you're paying taxes on $70,000.
Okay.
Because that's your assessed value, is 70%.
And so what then happens is that when you go through the budget process and you're looking at what all the different departments do and you're saying this is really how much we think they need to be able to function, then you come up with a dollar amount. And I understand that we include in we need X amount of dollars to make things work, that at Parks and Rec we assume, based on knowing what's happened within Parks and Rec and the different programs that are offered and the fees that are charged, that we need to have so much from the grand list
Right, because you would total up all your income, and then the difference between that income and what you need to, that would be the amount that has to be covered by your property taxes.
And then that's how we figure out how many dollars per thousand, right?
Correct.
That we
need
do.
for the
That's
mill
your
rate.
mill rate.
And that's the mill rate.
So then we need to come up with that so that it balances.
And then it's fair. And the mill rate is the same on all properties. So if I
Correct.
have a building downtown that I have businesses in, so it's just fair and square. Everybody's
One
paying
mill rate for
the same
everybody.
mill rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
That makes sense.
It does.
Okay. So the process is they all come, they present, the Board of Selectmen goes off and they do the first round and they bring it to you, and then you guys debate it.
We negotiate again. We again look. They don't come back and present again, but because there's 7 members to the Board of Finance.
Right.
Okay, so the 7 of us, meet together and discuss each department and who are the people working there. Because they have bargaining units, so that's.
Oh yeah, right.
So they're locked into that. What's the benefit cost, and then what are the costs to run the department, to provide the services that each department provides to the taxpayers. And
Okay. And then, so you guys discuss it. Does it ever go back? Do you ever put it together and it goes back to the Board of Selectmen, or once it comes to you guys, it's
We have the final.
moving
we have the
along?
final. We have the
Okay.
final say. The
From
Board of Finance.
from us, then it goes to the
town.
Well, the town meeting and the public hearing.
Well, and the public hearing comes first, right?
I believe
Right.
so. Yeah.
And that's where the community can come to you.
Ask questions.
And ask questions and can say,
Right.
you could have, so for example, if you had 100 people come to the meeting and 95 out of the 100 said you need to put more money in the library budget.
Right.
Then you would go back and you would listen to what the people have to say and
Correct.
see.
Usually, so then we make the final.
Right. We caucus again, and we listen to what everybody says.
Right,
We all take
right.
notes on who's there and what do they say and what do they want, and we caucus again on, what our constituents are asking for.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
Because we are public servants in a way. So,
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So-
Okay, and then so that's the public hearing, and then you come back, and so after the public hearing is when the budget that's really going to be considered is
Right.
put together.
Correct.
And then the town more thoroughly becomes involved because we do it through the town meeting.
Correct.
Right? And
Right.
that's when, And at the town meeting is where we can reduce it, that we can, as a town, make the decision to reduce any line item.
You can't add anything.
But you can't add anything.
Add in.
Right.
You can reduce.
Right.
Right.
And that's written in the charter.
Okay, and then if all goes well, we go from the town meeting into a referendum.
Correct.
And it passes, and phew, we're on to the
Everything's
next
all
day.
Everything is good to go.
Right. Okay, so we're going to assume that that's what always happens, even
Correct.
though sometimes
It
not so
doesn't
much.
Always, yes.
Okay, so now it's July 1, because it's the beginning of our new year, and
Yep.
you've done from February to whenever. It's like February to May. How often are you meeting typically during that time span? A lot, right?
A lot. I mean, the month of February, we meet probably 6 or 8 times, I would bet, and then a couple times a month after that to kind of...
Until the budget's
Until everything is
passed.
gelled.
Right.
So...
And then once it's gelled, and we know this is what's going to happen, and the tax bills go out, and we know what revenues are going to come in. Revenue's the right word, from from fees, et cetera. Now it's a little calmer, but you don't. It's not like you guys just go away until the next February.
Correct. No.
Right.
So talk to me about what happens, like July through December, for example.
We still meet every month.
Okay.
And we get monthly presentations of the financial status of the town. Is everybody staying within their budget? Have some unknown or unforeseen events happen that we need to be aware of? Does money need to be moved between departments? Because again, municipalities are not allowed to run deficits.
Right.
Okay, so municipalities must have their expenses equal their revenue.
Right.
So, so it's a balancing act, but we get presentations again about how the financial situation is on a monthly basis. So it's a good way to keep your pulse, to keep a pulse on how everything is going.
Got it.
So
in the event, because when I was on the Board of Education, I know that within the Board of Education, that also went on, that we had a finance committee within
Correct.
the board.
Right.
And that we would look at stuff, and sometimes we'd have one account where we needed more than we expected, and another account where maybe we could not spend what we thought we were going to, so we could actually shift funds within the Board of Ed.
Correct.
The Board of Ed is allowed to do that. They are the only, that and the library are the only departments that they can move things around.
Right. Like the board.
Everyone, none of the other departments can.
So if one of the other departments had a need, like the Public Works needed to do something, they would bring that to you, and you would make the decision.
Right.
Got it.
But those are the only two.
Right. So like when the budget is set, the library board is given a bottom line number, and they can determine among the library board how they want to allocate that. And the same with the Board of Education. They're given, here's your bottom line number. It's up to you to figure out how to manage to live within that. The other departments are actually given, here's the 10 line items within your bottom line. You must manage to each of these 10 line items. So it's just a different process. It's a different concept.
That's interesting.
But we have a very good rapport with the Board of Education.
Correct.
And we are always made aware when something like that does come up.
Right.
And they are very good, so that we always know what they are doing.
Going on.
And they pretty well stick to it, because they're the ones that planned it in the first place.
Exactly.
Correct.
And so they know where that money should be. It's just if something unforeseen happens.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing for any department. Or like somebody may come, like say you have a boiler break, or you have something happens, or with the storms, there's all kinds of reasons when there could be an unusual, and then that is when they have to come to us to see if, because they're going to need money from something else. But that's that happens.
Is that so? What you mentioned before is that people bring it in, you get the pulse, you can see that maybe money. So you could, if need be, if you see that there are what appears to be maybe a little extra over in this department, if need be, you could pull money from one department into another to cover, to make. Is that correct?
That you can do transfers between departments.
Okay.
Again, because you can't.
And at the end of the year, sometimes there will be money. Sometimes they will let it run. We don't always do them during the year. At the end of the fiscal year, we usually make adjustments. So you could have one section in your budget run in the deficit, and sometimes they will leave it there. We know what the reason is.
Correct.
But usually we don't make all these adjustments until the end of the year.
So in the event, okay, so let's say that's happening and you've got a deficit because of some
Unseen,
weird thing
whatever.
that happened, And there really isn't, within that annual budget, there really wasn't some extra. We hear frequently about this rainy day fund kind of thing.
Well, first there's always a contingency.
Okay.
So everybody always keeps a contingency fund for unexpected events.
So each department has
each town, each municipality should have a contingency fund, which is separate and distinct from the fund balance. The fund balance, we can talk about that. The fund balance is more or less like your savings account, okay? And your fund balance is how how we as a municipality are judged for our credit worthiness. So the better your fund balance, the more robust your fund balance, the better your credit worthiness.
Right, which is why you want to kind of keep an even keel going if you're doing any kind of capital projects like because any of those things that we do, school renovations, etc.
Or it's the rate that you're going to pay on that.
Right.
The better your financial position, the better your rate will be.
Right.
And lately, it's been very good for us because all rates are down, loan rates are down.
Right.
So we have been able to, even if we bond something like for the roads, we've been doing it, but we have not had to pay, the rate that we're paying on it is very low. And this has been a good time to have been doing something like that. Because we've been doing, every year we do so many roads, and we have been bonding that, but the cost has been very low.
Right. And let's talk about the bonding, because of course people get very freaked out about anytime we do anything with the high school, with the library, oh my gosh, this is just going to throw the mill rate over the moon,
and it does
yada,
because,
yada, yada.
because Bethel has a AAA rating.
Right.
Okay.
But what are we also doing in terms of projects come on and off? So
exactly. So you don't pile on all at once. You wait until we keep a graphical view basically of here's the next X number of years. Here's what's coming off of the debt, and so here's what you can bring onto the debt, which really won't skew your mill rate because you keep an eye on who's coming off, and then you can figure out how much you can afford to put on.
Right.
Because again, your debt payments are part of your. That's a whole department is your debt payments.
And isn't that something that, I know that balance is always something that the town has kind of thought about, but my impression is that more recently, particularly the Board of Finance, that you've been looking at really trying to keep the even keel and kind of pacing the projects, keeping in mind 5 years down the road, what do we need to do 10 years down the road?
We have a financial plan.
Right.
Yes.
We have a capital plan. Right. And we have it now. We don't always, it's each year what we're going to do. Sometimes you don't always get to do it, so then you move that along, but that is so that something doesn't get lost.
Right.
Whether it be an improvement to a building or whatever. Or whatever. We're aware of where we're going.
Right.
So that if we don't do it this year, then it goes into next year's, and we kind of try to follow that plan.
Right.
So that way you're doing it,
So you've got a plan going along.
So all those different things, when we have our meeting, there may be something regarding some of those. A bond may come due. We have to
So what does it mean when a bond comes due?
We do them for a certain length of time, and then it comes due.
And you have to pay it.
We have to pay it. Right, and then we float.
So is this is different from like making a monthly payment? This is more like, or you know it's coming? How does that work? Because I think of like having a mortgage, but it's not the same, right?
Not really. Those you can roll over.
Right.
And sometimes we do them because also we're bonding like we will do for the new year, because now like we're going to start to do more roads. So then you may add to it, but in the meanwhile we have kind of a budget to pay down the debt.
Correct.
Right.
But then we're continually adding to it. Because we like, especially since we've been doing the roads, that's been a big one. We've been borrowing a lot, doing that every year because the roads were in such a bad.
But it's rolling over. That as you are borrowing to do the roads this year, you're paying off some of what's been done.
Yes,
exactly.
And you're also, I imagine, because we also have a town controller, so they get involved in all this stuff as well.
Yeah, he's the one that gives us all our information.
So you also have the situation, I'm sure, and there's financial advisors for the town, so that they're constantly watching, and if interest rates go down, you can actually go through and go, hey, wait a minute, if we can redo this and drop our rates, right?
And he's very conscious of all that, and he keeps us informed. And that's mainly what our meeting is. He presents everything to us, and you know, he'll answer any questions for us, and so that's kind of how it works. Yes.
And then the next question that I have is how then, so we know, so we've got the comptroller, and they're actually, the comptroller in the comptroller's office, they're actually doing the process of paying the bills, dealing with the invoices, et cetera.
Right, keeping track. They actually track the dollars that are spent and match it up to what the budget is.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're really doing it, and then they're reporting back to you to say,
Every
here's
month.
what it looks like.
Right.
And they're, I guess, working on looking at what that plan is and kind of figuring out how that payment would work and stuff coming in and going out. Got it. And you all are the oversight to make sure that, from the citizen perspective, that the citizens, you are the representatives that make sure that the citizens are getting what we think we're going to be getting, and et cetera.
Exactly.
And I think the selectman also is very aware of it, and he also has a lot of dealings, you know, with the controller and everything, so he's very aware. And also helps to keep us informed, and he usually tells us, you know, what's going on, so he keeps us informed also.
Right. So then the last little question, because we're almost to the very end of our time, we really are close to the end of the time, so I'm not going to be able to do this, but the one piece that I wasn't quite sure of is the town treasurer, because we also have an elected official who is the town treasurer.
They sign the checks.
They sign the checks. So basically, you guys do all the oversight, making sure everything is good, and then they come along and they sign the checks.
Yep, they you know, coordinate with the comptroller's office.
Okay.
But their mission is to sign the checks.
Okay.
So.
And do they? So does the treasurer like come to any of your meetings and listen, and just to make sure? Okay. Just wondered if maybe there was any, not oversight, but just kind of an awareness going on there at all. Okay. Anyway, so you were concerned that we weren't going to manage to eat the time up, but guess what? We did a pretty good job there. Yeah. And thank you so much for explaining kind of what was going on.
Okay,
that was really great. Okay. And so you both...
We're running for re-election.
You're running
this
for re-election,
year.
and Pat Smithwick is also...
She's also the third person running with us. There's 3 seats available. Okay. And we are the 3 Democrats running for the 3 seats.
Okay, that makes sense. Right. That's pretty good. So good luck to both of you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Well done. Okay. I'm Janice Stevenson. This has been Bethel Today. I've been talking with Claudia Stephan and Eileen Freebairn. They are incumbent members of the Board of Finance and are running for re-election in November along with their colleague Pat Smithwick. And this is, as I said, Bethel Today. I think I just said that. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. This is the show of the Bethel Democratic Town Committee. Bye-bye.